Let's go ahead and get started with our water leak and drywall repair project. Well, here's another video you're probably not used to seeing on my channel, but I had a water leak in the area where my refrigerator goes, and noticed a water leak in front of the refrigerator. And for any of you who know anything about water leaks, you have to do a little investigating before you start tearing into the building. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't actually the line to the refrigerator in any way. So I hooked the refrigerator back up, and I had a water filter on here, by the way, with a line in between. So this line went to the water filter, and then another line went to this part of the bottom of the refrigerator. I wanted to make sure it wasn't leaking. When I first plugged it in, there was actually a puddle here with the filter on it. So I disconnected the filter, hooked this up, and then noticed that there was only a leak in the corner here. And water can travel over to here. So I took and disconnected the refrigerator and started looking around. And this right here was obvious that it wasn't the refrigerator. I started looking at the wall, seeing some of the paint with little bubbles on it. And these bubbles are formed by water actually pooling up behind the paint and between the paint and the wallboard. And here's a bigger bubble here and a couple of here. And I'm still thinking at this point, was it a roof leak? Is it a roof leak or a water leak? And so I'm not 100% sure, but more than likely it's going to be a water leak from your plumbing pipe. If it's wet and it hasn't rained in a while. And this is actually what I was looking at. I don't think it had rained for at least 2 weeks. And so I was kind of thinking, okay, time to rip some drywall out. And here are just some more ripples. You can see here kind of like it already filled up with water and receded. And so just kind of some little ripples there. And this was what was left. This is kind of the puddle I found after I'd pulled the refrigerator out, and this was probably about 4 or 6 hours later, I'm guessing, and given me a kind of thinking that, maybe the water leak's up here. Now, keep in mind, I built this, I remodeled all of this, and so I had a pretty good idea where the plumbing pipes were, and they weren't in the front where we just saw the damage here. The water pipes are back here. There's nothing here. So this tells me that this ceiling is out of level, sloping towards the front. The water leak was back here, which you'll see in a minute, and the water sloped down the drywall and then into this area. If this drywall would have been sloping the other way, there wouldn't have been any damage in the front, or the damage would have been less. So the sloping ceilings, you put a level on these ceilings and you think, hey, wait a minute, I leveled that and everything's nice and flat. Once you have a water leak, you're going to find out how flat everything really is. After we have made up our mind that it's probably not a roof leak, we will need to put a tarp down and then start poking into the ceiling. And I suggest starting with a small hole and kind of feeling your way out, around where you're going to be. I don't recommend grabbing a hammer and, really tearing this stuff up, because if you don't know what's up there, electrical wire, stuff like that, it could be dangerous. Take this slow, start with a smaller hole, make it a little larger. If you have any insulation, pull the insulation out. And again, I don't need a real big hole to get the insulation out here. So when we can see that the insulation's wet, we know that this is going to be another clue that we got water leaking from the top up here. And once you get a hole in it like this, wouldn't be a bad idea to use your cell phone. I used my camera, and I poked the camera up in there and started taking pictures. And we can see here where it's wet here. You can see here it's still wet, and I just snapped off a couple pictures. I didn't put them all in here. We can see here it's a little drier over here. It's still wet. We got a wet spot here. It's a little drier here. Again, this is where we just pulled out this would be the front corner. This corner right here is where the water damage is on the drywall. So this is the 2x4 here for the ceiling, it is sloping down towards the front. And this is the, looks like I probably have a 4x6 or something here as the header. And now we're in an area where it's dry. This is the opposite corner. This is the other corner. This would be the front, and then the right side if we were looking at the front of it, facing the area. So once I've kind of used my camera to get some more ideas where, that I don't have any wires in the way or other stuff, I can make the hole a little larger or cut the hole out to where it's going to be the size I'm going to use to refinish it, to replace the drywall. So here you can see we're not at that point. I'm still trying to figure out where the water is leaking from. My biggest concern was going to be the fact that I soldered all this stuff together originally and that it was leaking from the joint here. And I was like, oh no, this can't. And it actually wasn't. You'll see in a second that it wasn't my fault. It was the manufacturer's of the pipes fault. And here we're kind of zooming in. Here's the pipe, and this is actually the leak right here. And I actually thought this was a groove that I might have cut in when cutting the pipe. I would have thought that maybe this was something that I might have done by cutting some of the pipe, which I don't think I would have done that. Some people I've seen problems where they go in and they start cutting the pipe and they get a groove all the way around it and they stop because the measurement's wrong and they move it over 6 inches, cut and make another cut. And that ends up being a problem in the future. So this is a follow-up video to a video that I made earlier about finding the water leak and how the drywall needs to be removed, or at least one method of removing it. And just wanted to point out that in this video we will be fixing the water leak, and these are some of the tools that we will need. Some type of a MAP gas propane with a torch, and you don't have to get this one, you can get a different one, wire brush, flux, sandpaper, solder, and a copper pipe. And you might need some fittings. Now, in this part here, I'm actually going to show you something that didn't work in hopes that you don't follow the same mistake I made. But I tried to just remove this pipe. This is the one that's damaged. And I was going to try and reuse these fittings, and it didn't work out well for me. So I went ahead, removed it, cut another pipe, got it ready, except I couldn't get the inside of these fittings clean. It was really hard. It's a lot easier to clean the outside of the fittings. And I don't recommend reusing your fittings either. You can knock yourself out, but for a couple dollars, maybe you can just get some different fittings. And but this is what I kind of ended up with. The pipe went in about maybe a 1/16 of an inch on each side. And this is kind of it, and that's not going to do me any good. I was hoping that I'd be able to heat this up and it would pop right in. I've had that happen before, but it didn't work out. So when I was done, I had to take off the pipe off and then take the fittings off so that I could clean these pipes. And usually it doesn't take much to clean the pipes. But again, you can see, look at all the solder that's on it right now. And went ahead and cleaned everything off. You can see here, and it didn't take me long. Probably took me about, I'm guessing about a minute per pipe, but you can see where it's nice and clean there. And then I went ahead and cut the pipe in the fittings, attached the fittings to it, and then put it together. And this was a lot easier than trying to get that thing to snap back together. So there it is, soldered, and there's a close-up of it. So I'm not going to go into all the details, like I said, of the video, but I think I do have some other videos on soldering pipes together, and of course I could always make some more if needed. There's the damaged pipe right there. We can see it, and it hadn't been leaking for too long, but I'm guessing the hole was right around here. Now here's something I recommend doing, and remember this was the water supply line to the refrigerator. So I got a bucket and I went ahead and turned the valve on to blow out all of the crud, and you just wouldn't believe how much of the crud came out. And of course, this is going to be fragments of solder and stuff that is on the inside of the pipe that you can't see. And you can always hook the hose up to it, hook the hose up, and then put the hose in the bucket. That would be a little easier than what I did here. But here's what I kind of ended up with in the bucket, and I'm assuming this is a piece of solder. I didn't clean the bucket out before I used it, otherwise we could have examined it a little better, but I can tell you that there were fragments of metal that sank to the bottom in the bucket. Now be warned, if you do not clean out these pipes, then these little fragments of solder or whatever gets in those pipes I'm not saying it will, but it can get stuck in your valves. This would be your shower valves, toilet valves, or even parts to the refrigerator that supply the water, or to the ice maker, stuff like that. Or I hate to say it, you could end up with this stuff in your ice. So I have seen a lot of stuff before, including that crud in the ice from something like this. So will I admit to who did it? Maybe one day. Another thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you strap the pipes, make sure that they cannot move. I'm not suggesting that this was the problem at all, but since I took it apart and I could move these pipes a little bit, I went ahead and strapped it. And of course, there is the remnants of the damage. And in the next video, I will go over how I fixed the drywall. But you're going to need to cut some type of a square, something that can be replaced. So I just took and ran it along the joist, cleaned out all the debris here, along the edge here. And then, of course, got the old handy fan out. And the fan, I would imagine, I let this run for, I'm guessing 3 days at least, until I felt everything was dry, and then put the drywall in. And that will be in the next video. So I will put a link here for that. And hopefully this is making some sense to you. Like I said, I understand I'm not going through step by step. I make video. I have video of this. And I'm just not very good with the camera getting in there and the lighting. Hopefully one day I will improve that and have some more videos, action videos of work going on. Okay, the drywall has been cut and placed. And in this video, I'm going to kind of go over, just show you how the drywall joint compound is applied. And you got to get it into the corners. Try and squeeze it into the corners there. You can see the gaps. And I have the mud a little closer to the point on the corner trowel. If I just dipped my trowel in, and pardon about the phasing out, automatic focus, not much on, I need to get another camera, that is for sure. But anyway, these are one-shot videos. I make them and can't go back and fix them again. No redos. But I've been having problems with this. I'm going to try and make some more videos of me doing something. There you can see me squeezing it into the gaps there, trying to get it into the corners. You want to have I'm going to use paper tape here. If I was using fiberglass tape, I'd put the fiberglass tape on first, but I like paper tape. Gives me a nice corner. And I've already have the paper tape ripped to length. Once I have enough of it on there, you need, it's kind of like an adhesive, you need to have a base coat of plaster or joint compound on there. And then simply put a little bit on the trowel. You don't have to put any joint compound on the trowel. You can simply run it through if you want not to have it on there. And this is the first coat, remember. It doesn't need to be perfect. You just need to make sure that the paper doesn't have any gaps in between it and the drywall or the joint compound. And it kind of gives you a good idea. If you finish everything and let it dry for a day, or when it's dry, you'll see the paper tape actually separate. And that'll tell you that you didn't do it right, and that might need to be redone. So again, I'm just going with a corner there, getting the joint compound on. And this, I'm not using topping, I'm using joint compound here. I already got the paper, and it's going to be cut a little bit longer than the damage. So you can see there, it's a little bit longer. I might need to put a little more plaster on there, or joint compound. Sorry, joint compound plaster. Too used to calling it that, even though I was never a plasterer. I'd like to say I was never a drywaller, but I have done too much drywall to say that. I might not be as fast as these people that do it every day, but definitely get the job done. Now, I already did the repair, so I can say that it turned out great. Can't even tell that any damage was done. Automatic focus on the camera there. So now I'm going to use the fiberglass tape. I like using the fiberglass tape for the flat breaks and not the corners. And you can put the fiberglass tape on first and then put the corner paper tape on if you want. You can put it on like that. You can fill the stuff. It's not necessary. The fiberglass tape is usually a self-adhesive tape. It'll stick to, has a little bit of sticky stuff on it. It'll stick to the drywall, no problem. I say that, but sometimes when it gets old, it doesn't. So I'll be narrating at this. We're on 3 minutes right here. This is an 11-minute video. So if I pause every once in a while, it'll be because I ran out of something to say, right? So there I am filling the gaps, and then I got to get enough on. You can see where the edge of the painted surface there. That's going to have to be covered up. You're going to have to get enough of the compound on to, and again, with the fiberglass tape, it's not the same as the paper tape. I say that. So with the paper tape, you would need to cover everything. With the fiberglass tape, it basically, it doesn't need, it's not the same application method. And again, like I said, I could have put this on first instead of doing it. But then if I put it on, sometimes I can't fill the gaps very easy. So fill the gaps first, and then put the joint or the fiberglass tape on if you can. And that's looking pretty good there. Putting another surface on. And for me, I like to get, you don't have to do it. You can actually let something like this dry, come back the next time. But in order to minimize the amount of times I put the drywall joint compound on, I want to try and get as much as I can on and get as flat of a surface as I possibly can, so that the next time I put it on, it won't take as many times to do it. So if you put a little bit on and then put a little bit more on, it's just like anything else. Pretty soon you have you've spent 5 days working on it. And if you don't know, okay, now this is, I use a pool finishing trowel. A little rust there, what can I say? Okay, I went and cleaned the rust off of the trowel with some sandpaper. Now I'm ready to go again. And you can use square trowels. You can use other types of trowels. I don't know what, for whatever reason, the pool trowel seems to work good, or the trowel with rounded corners for me. I've been using it for a long time. And you can always use the larger drywall knives too, but I haven't had as good a luck as I had with these trowels. So again, use whatever you have or whatever you're comfortable using. And I'm just kind of going over the areas and flattening it out. You don't want to put too much on. You just want enough on to cover up the fiberglass tape or the paper tape. And if I was to tell you how much, it's hard to say. A 32nd of an inch should be enough for something like that. But you want to try and get it flat. And you can actually change direction. See how I'm going this way and then going that way? You can go in from right to left. And then if I was to say right to left, let's say you could go east to west and then north to south kind of a thing with a trowel. And I'm going to want to cover this up. Otherwise, if I don't flatten or blend the edge of the painted surface where I tore the texture off, then there would be a line there. So you're going to want to fill this also. And again, it's not that difficult. If the mud drywall joint compound isn't going on smooth enough, you can always wet it down a little bit. Don't get it too wet though. But and you can always, they have like I call them the big potato mashers, and you can always use those, or put it in a bucket and use a mixer. But it's got to be a low RPM drill that you use. You can't, I believe it's not over 300 revolutions per minute. Otherwise you can, I think it traps air in the drywall mixture, but again, I'm not sure on that. I just know it can't spin really fast. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because this is one of those things that could make all the difference in the world when you're drywalling. You're watching me do it and everything's going on smooth, but if you're fighting it and struggling with it, sometimes all you gotta do is add a little bit of water and then you're like a professional. Everything's going great. And again, this is a real-time video. I just wanted to make something that you could see the entire process instead of cutting in and out and doing it that way. So again, I'm just kind of flattening it out. And when I feel like I got enough on there and it's I don't have too many lines in there. And if you do have lines, you have ridges from it, you can sand them out. So don't feel bad if you have a line, like you can see a line, I just went over and flattened it out. If you were to leave that, then you could just grab the sander, the hand sander, and sand it flat, and then start putting the plaster on again. I've actually seen people put the, now I'm taking the stuff off the edge, I just want it in the center. Just want it in the center there when I go over this. And as I was saying before, I've seen people put this stuff on and then just sand it flat. And that might be the method that you can use. Again, my videos are meant to try and make this process as easy and understandable as you possibly can. You can see I'm not a professional movie maker, but hopefully one day I'll be a little better at it than this. That's why I think I'm going to get a different camera. This is what it looks like after the second coat was applied. You can see it looks pretty good. A couple of ridges in there. And again, this kind of real-time stuff I'm showing you. I'm not editing any of this. Now these little ridges you have, you can actually sand them out if you want, or you can scrape them off sometimes with a drywall knife. Just kind of use it like a scraper. I've done that plenty of times. Kind of checking out the surface, seeing if it's going to blend in. And then I went ahead and patched some of the spots that, and I just used the small trowel for this. If you wanted to use a larger, trowel, you could put another thin coat of joint compound, or now you could actually put topping mix over this, which topping mix usually sands. It's easier to sand, but the joint compound for something like this will work out just fine. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the sanding, and got everything dry there. And now it is time to sand. Just our little pole sander. You can use pole sander. You can use a block of 2x4 on a block of sand off of sandpaper. The sandpaper is 80 grit, I believe. And it usually doesn't take much if you haven't created a lot of lines, I guess I should say. But you just sand all the lines out. And again, if I sand everything and I need to fill anything again, or something doesn't look right, sand it a little more, and this should be ready for the texture. And some textures don't require a really smooth surface. The rougher the texture, it doesn't have to be really good. A lot of times, if you're going to be doing a smooth wall or something with no texture, it's got to be pretty good. So you can see this is real time, like I said. I'm not spending a lot of time sanding this. When we're done with this video, I was done with sanding. So that's it. Off to the next video on texturing. Okay, now it's time to mix the texture, and I'm just going to use some joint compound. Some people want to use actually a texture mix. I've done this plenty of times. If you need a texture mix, go get one. And I'm just basically going to add some water to the joint compound and make a lighter mixture. So I'm just going to kind of add some water. And again, I'm trying to do this in real time to give you an idea how long it takes. I believe this video took about 8 minutes, but I had to cut at least a minute out of it because I was mixing and or setting up the air compressor. And you can see I guess you can't see the hose there. Off on the left, there is the bottom of the texture gun. But you can see there, I've got a nice creamy mixture. And I'm going to put that in the hopper. And then I will start texturing. So there's the hopper. And I think you could probably go down and rent one of these at a rental yard. And I turned the noise off, so it was kind of annoying. But I guess I can make the sound for you. How's that? Sounds like, hope that wasn't too annoying. But I'm just starting out just lightly doing it. I think the air pressure I have right now is about 20 pounds of air pressure. And you could always test this on a piece of wood, drywall. If you have a piece of smooth concrete or something, you could spray it on there and just wash the concrete off. But if you need to get an idea of what you're doing, then you can, and pardon me again for the texture of the camera going in and out of focus, but I had to use the cardboard. I use the cardboard to protect stuff. You can tape everything. You can mask everything off. Go for it. Sometimes when you mask the stuff off, it leaves a line. I don't like to do that. Just kind of like to go over it and then wash everything when I'm done. But I understand if you have an area you're spraying and you don't want to get it all over the place, do whatever you have to. And you can see it's kind of spurting out. The texture's not coming out because there's not enough of it in the hopper for gravity to pull it down. And if I had a real wet mix, it would be going a little easier, but then I might not be getting the texture that I want. But experiment. Take a mixture, put it in there. If it's not what you want, dump it back out of the hopper into the bucket, remix it, and see what works, what you're actually getting. And this is an orange peel finish. That's peel, P-E-E-L. And again, I'm shaking it down to get the stuff down. It's just not flowing as easy as I'd like it to. And just kind of wiggling it with my hand. If I spray, sometimes if you just hold it in one spot, you could get a big glob on it. So make sure that texture gun is always moving. Move it from right to left, up and down, and wiggle it like I'm doing it there. Because if you get a load of it in one area, you could end up with a splotch. And if that actually happens, don't worry. You can take and let it dry and sand it out. Or you can let it dry and try spraying over it. And again, I don't want to get stuff all over the living room, so I'm using it right there to get the corner. And I don't really have a big piece of cardboard there, but you can always get a bigger piece or a piece of wood, something, whatever you feel comfortable with if you need something bigger. And just kind of, you can see it, I'm just kind of spraying a little bit here and a little bit there. And if it gets to the point where you're looking and it's starting to get runny or something, just stop. Stop, let it dry, assess the situation again, and then either sand it or spray it. I just wanted to give you an idea of how the joint compound is flowing into the hopper there. So that's why I'm wiggling it, kind of shaking it down. Getting ready to spray again, and it's hard to see sometimes. You might need a light, you might need more light. And I also have a video on using coloring. You can always use some food coloring, chalk, something. I've actually used paint before, water-based paint, and this gives you a different color. So instead of spraying white over white, you could spray kind of a pink or any color you might find more helpful. And that really helps a lot. And I'll put a link to that video in this one here. And don't forget to visit the website. I have other videos on drywalling. They might be a little outdated, but still could be helpful. I mean, I do realize that when I made some of these videos, it was 10 years ago. And I shouldn't say 10 years ago, probably about 8 years ago. And they're a little outdated. I see where everybody has some really nice videos on a variety of different things. I'm going to have to start updating some of mine, or I'm not going to have anybody watching them anymore. So again, just spraying. This is in real time, remember. Only part of this that I cut out was the part in the where I had to set up the compressor and get the hose and everything in there. They're just looking around. You're going to have to get at different angles to see different stuff. You know, you might have an area that doesn't look like it's getting much of the texture on it. And you're, going to have to spray that area, but you're going to have to spray it with, you can't just glob it on. So again, that's where it comes to where you kind of feather the trigger in, use the, move it, might need to move it a little faster. And I've seen people just come in here and just hold it and they just spray away and it turns out great. For me, I like to move it a little bit and go over it a couple of times instead of just spraying it on. This is going to be the last video. I think I said that it was going to be the last video before, but I'm just going to go whip through this. I realized that I never gave you a picture of what it looked like when it was completely done. So I'm just going to kind of whip through this here. And you can watch the other videos. I created a playlist. I'll put a playlist link at the end of the video here. Give you an idea what I was doing here. I was taking the sponge and wiping off all the texture, and then I was just going to kind of blend in this, take the sponge, clean this area, and then just lightly go over this. Don't clean up to this area. You're going to have to actually feather it in, otherwise you're going to have a line there. The purple paint instead of the black, I used a black primer for this, so I just wanted something dark. And here you can see where it's been painted. And this is fresh paint right along here. I wanted to give you an idea of what it would look like when it was all done and dried in. So you can see right here, this is probably at least 2 or 3 weeks after it has been painted, and it looks like it really blended in. Now, of course, it's going to blend in pretty good. It's the exact same paint. I didn't have to have this matched or anything. This is the same paint that I used, and you can see here how it blended in nice. So this probably needs to be cleaned up a little more. I'll get the maid on that right away. I guess I'll have to do it. But anyway, just wanted to give you an idea what it would look like when it was done, what it looked like, to give you an idea that it did turn out okay. I know some people, it really irritates me, they'll do a video and then they will show you how to do the process, but you don't get to see what it looks like when it's done, or even 5 years after it's been completed. And that's the real big key to making most of these videos. So maybe I'll take a picture of this in another 20 years. By then I'll probably have another water leak, so what the heck, it'll be another video series to make. So anyway, that is it for this series. No more videos on it. I am going to probably make one video for my Greg Van Com site. And for those of you who don't know that I have a couple other sites, go to the website homebuildingandrepairs.com, and I believe on the first page you should be able to find links to some of our other YouTube channels.